Hi guys, Matt here from Rapid Development. Hope you're all safe and well during the lockdown. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be offering some webinars using the platform Zoom. There's going to be quite a few topics on offer, but one of those is going to be some tidal planning workshops. And that's going to cater for lots of different people. It could be for those who are totally new to tidal planning, just started sea kayaking or getting out onto the water, and want to learn from scratch how to do planning for journeys on the sea. So that's probably best done in a modular way, so you can do an hour once a week or a few hours a week with myself using that platform. It could be for those who've done a bit before but have forgotten it and just want to gain more confidence in doing it, or are still a bit confused about certain aspects of planning. So the same is on offer to those people as well. Or it could be that you've done quite a lot of it and you're pretty skillful at it and actually just want to connect with other people during this challenging time and plan trips together. So there could be trips such as crossing the Pentland Firth, crossing the Minch, circumnavigating Anglesey, circumnavigating Skye, and you could do those together with myself on that web-based platform Zoom. So individuals can get involved in this, and that could be on a one-to-one basis with myself, or it could be on scheduled sessions with other people, or it's also on offer to clubs and groups. So if you're in a club and you want to get together online and do some tidal planning together, then that option's available with myself. So if any of those things appeal, then just get in touch. This video is just going to be a bit of a taster of the type of things that we're going to do, and just really looking at the very first stages of tidal planning, and just giving you a bit of a taster about how the webinars will work and the content that will be included in them. Hope you all stay safe and maybe see you soon.
So just a bit of a taster, we're going to imagine that we're planning a trip to the Arisaig Skerries on the west coast of Scotland, and this video is just going to run through the first stages of that process. And here's a wee picture of the Arisaig Skerries, and if you've been before you know how beautiful it is, and if you haven't been, then after lockdown, obviously we're not going to do this trip for real just now, we need to all stay at home, but after lockdown, if you haven't been, then get yourself out there, because it's an absolutely stunning place to go paddling, particularly on a day like this. In this photo, beautiful white sand beaches, Atlantic grey seals swimming around, starfish, fantastic local people with great food and drink on offer as well in the village itself, great views out to the small isles and to the Isle of Skye. It's an absolutely brilliant place to go paddling, and we're going to imagine that we're doing a trip there and do the first stages of planning a journey around the Arisaig Skerries. So just before we get started with our planning, we need to get a few resources together to help us to do that. The first one that we're going to need is preferably some form of sea kayaking guidebook, and we're going to use the Skye and North West Highland Sea Kayaking Guidebook, written by Doug Cooper and published by Pesda Press, which is a fantastically presented resource for sea kayakers going to that area. If you're doing a trip which isn't in that book, then we might need to grab some pilot books which are going to have the information in, so they might need to be on hand to gather some information if our trip isn't in that guidebook. We're also going to need a copy of the Reed Smallcraft Almanac. We don't necessarily need this, we might use a web-based resource to get our tide times, such as an app or a website, but we're going to go through the process of not using technology for that and actually get to grips with how we're going to use this book, because it's a good skill to have, to be able to use an almanac. We might want to have our Ordnance Survey map of where we're going to be going, and depending on what we're doing and where we're going, we might also want to have a chart to hand. This is the Admiralty chart of where we're hoping to go paddling. There's also IMRE charts available as well. And finally, it's good to have a notepad and a pen, because we're going to be writing some stuff down. So they're the resources that ideally we want to get together to do the planning for our trip. So let's get started, and our first port of call really is to have a wee look at the guidebook, if we're going to use the guidebook, and have a bit of a read through about the trip and get some information noted down. But what I'm looking for to start with is the tidal port, the standard port of where I'm going to be going, and as we can see here, it's one of the first thing that comes up, and our tidal port for our trip to the RSA Skerries is going to be Ullapool. So I've got that, and now my next port of call is to find out the tide times for that standard port, that tidal port, which in this case is Ullapool. So now that I know that the standard port for my trip is Ullapool, I need to get some tide times for that place. And I'm going to do that by going to my Reed's Smallcraft Almanac and flicking towards the back of the book. I will find tide tables for the whole year, for selected standard ports around the UK, plus some nearby on continental Europe as well. So I flick towards the back of the book and flick through the pages which go geographically around the UK until I find the pages for Scotland and the pages for Ullapool. When I found those pages, which are the ones here, I'm going to have a look at the day that I intend to go paddling on. And we're going to imagine that we're going to go paddling today. Obviously we can't at the moment because we all need to stay at home. But that date is Friday, the 3rd of April, and I've circled it on the tide tables just now. For each day, there's a selection of numbers, and let's just have a discussion about those. There's a bold number 3, which obviously relates to the fact it's the 3rd of the month. We've got an F, which relates to the fact it's Friday, and then 4 times, which are my high and low water times. After those times, we have some tidal heights, which are in metres. The larger numbers, so the 3.9 and the 4.0, the times which are next to those are our high water times, and the 2 times which are next to 2.1 metres, that's our low water times. Something that we need to be aware of though is that these times are printed in Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Time, and what we need to do is convert them to British Summer Time. That's due to the fact that the clocks went forward last weekend, and the fact we're now in summertime. There's a box at the top left hand corner of each tide table page which reminds us of that, and it says for summertime we need to add 1 hour in non-shaded areas, and if we look at the page as a whole we can see that the 3rd of April is indeed in a non-shaded area. So what I'm going to do next is write down those times on my notepad and do that conversion to British summertime. I'm also going to write down the tidal heights. So I've written those times down, I've written down the date, I've written down the standard port, which is Ullapool, and then I'm going to write down the high water and low water times. First of all in UTC, and then I'm going to do that conversion and add an hour so that I've got British summertime times for the high and low water. Obviously the bigger the tidal height, the bigger the number, then that's the high water time. The smaller number, that's going to be the low water time. So that's that written down now, and I've got that written on my notepad. But of course we're not going to Ullapool, we're going to the RSA Skerries, so the tide times aren't going to be the same at the place where we're actually going compared to our standard port. So what I need is something called a tidal constant, and that will be in either the guidebook. If I'm doing a trip which isn't in the guidebook, then I need to delve into a pilot book potentially, but luckily this one is in the guidebook, and I'm looking for that sentence which says high water, low water at Arisaig is around 40 minutes before Ullapool. So now that I've got the information, I need to do a bit of conversion to work out what the high and low water times will be at Arisaig compared to Ullapool. So now that I know that the times at Arisaig is 40 minutes before Ullapool, I can then do a bit of conversion. So I make a note of that, I make a note, and that's how I would write it, -0040 Ullapool, make a note on my notepad, and then I do my conversion. So as we can see, high water, the first high water of the day at Ullapool is 3:40 in British summer time. So it's 40 minutes before that at Arisaig, which will be 3 o'clock. And I do that conversion for the rest of my times. The tidal heights are going to be the same in this case, so I make a note of those again. And then my next task is to work out the tidal range, which is the difference between high water and low water. Why do I need that? I need that because I need to work out if I'm on neaps or springs or somewhere in between, because that's going to unlock a lot of information for me. That's going to let me know how fast the tide is going to be rising and falling, how fast it's moving side to side, and it affects lots of things potentially about my trip. So I need to know that tidal range and whether we're on neaps or springs or somewhere in between. So doing a bit of maths, some subtraction, I can work out that my range is 1.8 or 1.9 for that day, doing a bit of subtraction there. So for example, I've taken 2.1 from 4 metres for the middle of the day when I'm likely to be going paddling, and we can see that the range is 1.9 metres. So now that I know my range for the day is 1.9 metres, I need to find out whether that's neaps or springs or somewhere in between. And there's lots of ways that we can do that using the Smallcraft Almanac. One of the ways is we can go to the first page of the Ullapool tide tables and we get faced with a complicated, intimidating looking graph. We're going to come back to that another time. We're just looking at this box, which is on the top right of that graph, and we can see the mean ranges for Ullapool. And the neap range, as that box shows, is 1.8 metres, and our range is 1.9 metres, which is nearest damn it neaps in terms of a mean range. So we can say, based on that it's going to be neap tides today for the paddling that we're going to be doing. There's other ways as well, using the Smallcraft Almanac, that we can work out whether we are springs or neaps. As it says in the top right hand corner of the page, dates in amber are springs and dates in grey are neaps. And you might not be able to quite make it out, but the Thursday the 2nd, so the day before, has got a grey number for the number 2, and we're paddling the day after. So that means the day before was neaps, so we're pretty much on neaps. Another way is that symbol which denotes the moon, because it's a black and white circle, that means it's a half moon. So anytime it's a half moon, then that's going to be again neap tides, so that lets us know we're on neaps. So I've now got 3 bits of evidence to tell me that I'm on neaps. Another way is to look at this page, which is our 2020 tidal coefficients, which is a whole lot of numbers produced into a big grid. All we need to do is zoom in into and find the 3rd of April. 3rd of April will get given the number 36 in the morning and number 41 in the afternoon, and I go to the bottom of the page and I can translate as to what that means. So 45 is going to be a mean neap tide. Those numbers again were 36 and 41, so just below but not too far away from a mean neap tide. So it's not a very small neap tide, it's not an average tide, it's a lot closer to a mean neap tide. So that's another bit of evidence that tells us whether we're on springs or neaps. Won't go into the theory behind springs and neaps just now. We'll save that for another time. That'll be included in the webinars. But basically that tells us that the difference between high and low water, that tidal range, is going to be smaller. And the tides are going to be moving side to side slower compared to if they were on springs. So it is really useful bit of information for the next stage that we need to do, which is working out our side to side movement of tides. So just to come back to what we've worked out just now, we've just worked out the high and low water times for Arisaig, for where we're going. And we're likely to be paddling during the middle of the day. So low water is going to be 9:33 and high water is going to be 15:49. So for the majority of our paddling time, if we go paddling in the middle of the day, then the tide's going to be rising, the tide's going to be coming up. So if we go over to our map, then we'll start with lots of these little skerries exposed, but as the day goes on, then more of them are going to get covered by water, and we're going to see fewer skerries and fewer rocks, and a lot of those sandy places are going to start getting covered. So that's what that tells us. What's really important is that this is only one part of the story. We've worked out our high and low water times, which is great, but from here what we would do next is actually start thinking about any tidal streams which are going to be happening, so that side to side movement of tide. And as we can see in the Arisaig, Lochnan Kiel area, there are some places of tidal movement, so my next stage would be to try and work that out and what's going on with those, but we'll save that for another time, another video. You get involved with the webinars to find out how to do that. And of course, we haven't looked into the weather. The weather is going to be equally as important factor, sometimes more important factor in terms of the paddling that we're going to be doing. So I definitely want to be doing a bit of research and a bit of information gathering about weather and finding out what the weather is going to be doing for my paddling today. Of course, in real life we're going to be sat inside today just thinking about going paddling, so I can look at the weather from my living room. So there we are, that was just a bit of a taster about how we look up our high and low water times for where we intend to go paddling using a Reed Smallcraft almanac. So just the first stages of some tidal planning. There's more stages to follow, and there'll be some more videos that will follow which go into some detail about how we do that. And of course, if you enjoyed it and you want to learn some more, then feel free to get in touch. We can do some coaching of that in a web-based setting. So just drop me an email if you fancy learning some more and getting some more practice. In the meantime though, let's hope we can all get out onto the water soon and enjoy some fantastic trips in some great places. But in the meantime, everyone stay safe and see you soon.